Okay, it's In the Clinch with Greg Nelson and Team Academy, where we tackle and grapple all things martial arts. Here, represented by Minnesota Martial Arts Academy, all right? So we're here at academymin.com if you want to look us up. Also, zebraathletics.com, where with everything that has to do with mixed martial arts, facility, mats, yoga mats, everything. It's one of the best mat companies in the world. Check them out. Also, pedrosauer.com and thaiboxing.com.
Okay, so today we decided we were going to talk about self-defense. And given Greg's background in martial arts and his real-world experience in self-defense, I think one of the first things we're going to do when we have like a conversation is help to define the terms. You know, if we don't have like a shared meaning, we're never going to be able to kind of understand when it's okay to use self-defense, when it's not okay to use self-defense, and when it becomes vigilantism. So what do you guys think about that? What do you think? Why is it important to define the terms in a dialogue?
I think one of the biggest things is you have to know, what self-defense is for you and what is going to prompt you to actually have to attack somebody. I mean, that's a huge thing. You have to have a line that's pretty firm drawn in that's going to prompt you to have to actually defend yourself against the onslaught of somebody who's trying to hurt you. For me personally right now, I think I can probably run from most everything. I have to defend myself. However, if there's a situation where you can't run, maybe you have a family member with you or kids or whatever, and someone attacks you, you have to stand your ground. So, there's a point where you cannot get away safely. Someone's there to violently hurt you. You have the right to defend yourself.
Right. So the definition of self-defense is not going to be self-offense, right? It's not always going to be using more force than necessary, right? There are cases where people are going to use they're going to use deadly force, not in a defensive way, like for example in war, right?
Yeah, you got to be able to.
We're not talking about war today.
No, it's about defending yourself and getting away as safely as possible, right? And that's a big thing because, if you all of a sudden defend yourself and end up turning it over, and then next thing you know, you're on top of the person and pounding their face in, this is a different situation now, right?
Well, at what point do you start? I think that's a big issue. It's like, what point do I start my self-defense?
And that's why I think you should have a very firm, line drawn that until somebody crosses that line, and you gotta determine that for yourself, right? Until someone crosses that line, you don't do anything. They could say or do practically anything, but once they cross that line that you've determined, maybe punching you, pushing you, going after your family, then you got to do whatever you got to do.
At what point legally is it?
Well, that again is something that
we're gonna get into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk about that.
That seems like a can of worms too.
Yeah, but I think the biggest thing is you got to seriously look at who you are as a person and what you're capable of, for one, because man, if you're in a situation where you're getting attacked, you may be a smaller person and you could then attack with more force and in a deadlier rate than someone who's a big giant dude, all right? Mm-hmm. And also, could you have gotten away? Could you have ran without attacking the person first? Because if you go to court on this, that's what they're going to ask. Could you have gotten away?
Yeah. Well, so that kind of brings up one of the other things that comes to mind is when do you use police, or when do you use someone else to protect you for self-defense, and when do you protect yourself, and when is vigilantism? When do you get together with your buddies and try to protect your friend or you?
Well, I mean, I can tell you this: the era that we're in right now is a lot different than it was back in the 80s. I mean, it was a little bit more crazy back then. It seemed like fighting was more prevalent. You fought in school. Someone would come up and punch you. You'd punch him back, and you got in a fight. And then, things happened. Now, you know,
And then you'd be friends.
yeah, then you'd be friends. It's almost like a ring fight. You might not like the guy beforehand, but then you fight, and all of a sudden you're like, okay,
Well, it's
the
like
guy's not
zero
bad.
tolerance now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, zero tolerance. I mean, even in schools, which, man, if there's a bully or somebody that's really verbally or physically assaulting somebody, if that person tries to defend themselves in school now, they're in as much trouble as the person that started the whole
Yeah.
thing because of the zero tolerance. And, you know, there's a case in point where my son had to do that, where this guy kept on calling his little girlfriend at that time a slut and a whore and a cunt. I mean, really vile things. And so Gunner said he was going to do something about it. And I said, what are you supposed to do first? Who do you got to tell? And I said, tell that person and use the exact words that she's being called, because to me that was pretty out of hand. Well, nothing happened. They didn't do anything. So I ended up only pushing the guy. And here's what's funny. When he pushed this guy, because this kid fought a lot of kids, two other kids tried to jump him, and Gunner actually grabbed those kids and pulled them off. So he saved the kid. Yet he was suspended the same amount of time as the kid that was starting the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that kid had been in several fights too. So it's weird.
It
It's
seems
zero
weird
tolerance.
to define it
Yeah.
in just these neutral terms, that somebody's not in the right there.
Well, I think they're
Doesn't seem like a good lesson.
From the school perspective, they could possibly be concerned about lawsuits. And over the
Yeah.
years, the more and more our
Yeah.
society has
Just-
started to file lawsuits against, things like a school district that have insurance policies that pay
Yeah.
out, and rather
Yeah.
than go to court, it's a strategy. And so they
Sure.
more and more they've probably had to get less and less tolerant of anything. You
Yeah.
touch someone,
It's not like a
You touch
moral,
them.
it's not a moral issue. It's a
you cock your
it's
fist
about
back.
a
It's-
lawsuit.
Yeah, you're
But-
suspended.
It comes into that sometimes too, if you're looking at, you know, defending yourself in a real life situation. That's where, let's say you defend yourself and you do it enough that would allow you to get away. But next thing you know, instead of getting away, you take it that one step further, and next thing you know, you're on top of the person and you're punching them or choking them or doing anything, and there's the three people that walk around the corner, and you're on top of the person punching them in the face, even though they attacked you and even maybe have violently attacked you, but no one else saw that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you turn the tables and you're on top and you're smashing the person. Well,
Well,
who
legally
knows?
that stuff is pretty defined. If you use more force than was coming at you, that's against the law.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
And
but
you
the
get in
bottom
trouble for
line
that,
is,
you probably should.
here's the bottom line though. In a real self-defense situation, real fight, you have to be one step ahead of the person. You can't have it equal, because the guy punches you in the
Right.
face, I punch him in the face.
That's reasonable though.
Yeah, so I let's
It's
say
not
someone
that if I
punches
poke
me
you in the chest and you pull out a knife and stab me.
yeah, that's
not
totally
reasonable.
different. Which
That's not
that
the
brings
thing.
up another point we'll get to later. But you know, you got to be able to defend yourself, and that's where, you know, sometimes, you know, just kicking a person, foot jabbing them away, so that you have enough room, enough time to get out and run, might be the opportunity. Plus, the other thing is, how many times is it just one person just attacking you? A lot of times it's multiple attackers. So all of a
Yeah, I've
sudden,
almost never seen a street fight or
Yeah.
since maybe elementary or junior high that was one on
There's
one.
always people around.
yeah, you might have some crazy dude
You
that's
don't
just
know
trying to
who's-
pickpocket you or something, or do something stupid, and it tries
Yeah.
to mug you. But for the most part, it's always been multiple assailants. It's always been groups. And all of a sudden, if you are unable to negotiate your way out of there, or just look at the problem and avoid it, you're in the middle of that. Well, that changes things a little bit. Your force might have to be a little bit higher than just grabbing somebody and throwing them down to the ground and holding them, because now you're getting smashed.
Well, you know, most people have never even thought about defining where the line is where they have to defend themselves.
Yep.
No, because most people rely on the police.
Police or whatever.
Or they're-
So in that moment, most people are going to be completely
Blindsided.
just shocked
Yeah.
at someone's level of violence. I think most people would be shocked.
Well, in a random attacker situation, but we know that most fights probably aren't random attackers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So. But anyways, so let's talk about martial arts and martial arts' role in self-defense. Do you think that martial arts teaches people actual self-defense, Are we teaching self-offense? Like, there's
Well-
all this debate about the reality of your techniques and whether or not it actually works in real fighting, and how do you know, and what's the role of sport in sport type training, with pads and safety versus like eye pokes and throat attacks and the like.
I think that the biggest thing that doing martial arts does is that it brings up your overall confidence in how you look as a person. So therefore, a lot of situations may be avoided because you just look more confident and look like you could actually handle yourself. And people are wolves, so they're going to go after the weak. And if you look like you can handle yourself, then the martial arts, and really almost anything that allows you to build your confidence and gives you a certain aura can help you, defend yourself without even getting in a fight. So that's the beginning part. But then, without a doubt, there are certain martial arts that are more effective because they're contested all the time. That's why people who have this big argument between, well, that's a sport versus where art's a killing art or whatever they say.
Right.
To me, it's like, oh, really? So you've tested it to the level where you have another person that's coming after you and trying to take you out?
We can't because we would kill them.
Exactly. So that's where it becomes fantasy. And that's where I think, arts where you're actually contesting another person who's trying to stop you from getting on top, be it grappling, right? Or jiu-jitsu or wrestling, where you're trying to dominate another resisting opponent. All right? And then the other level is like striking arts, like boxing or Thai boxing, where you're in front of another person, they're punching you and you're punching them back. And so you're actually feeling the physical force and the intensity that could happen in a street fight, and you're physically getting tougher and you're feeling more confident and you know what pressure is. That's a big deal.
So it's the training method as opposed to like a specific technique or a style.
I believe so. And I will tell you this too. Very few people talk about this when they talk about combative martial arts. It's attitude. Man, attitude, you could have a craptacular fighting style. Nothing. But if your attitude is you're just going to start swinging and going nuts, man, that's what a street fight is.
That intention is super hard to deal with.
Intent is 9/10 of the law in a street fight, right? You come out and you're intent to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
Some of the most vicious street fighting characters that I ever knew probably weren't trained that much. They had the attitude.
Yeah, put it this way. How many serial killers do you think practice their craft? They just go and kill people.
Yeah.
True.
Some of the hardest like Thai boxing matches we've done were a guy who was just swinging for the fences. It was terrible.
Yeah.
You don't know how to deal with it. They're not using technique, but they're coming at you super hard, and usually a round or two in, they start wearing out, but that intention is...
Yeah.
I think that the trained individual, working techniques and being on the mat and being in the ring is one thing that is definitely going to help your self-defense, but then being in a street fight is so much different. So I think if maybe you're not aware of that first of those surroundings and the thing that's going to happen right away before you have to use self-defense, to me I didn't get in street fights. Your background is, you've done all the security work and everything, so I just haven't come really face to face with that. It's getting in the ring and dealing with somebody that I know right away is going to come at me. So for me, that whole area right there seems to be the most important, being aware of when you need to go.
Yeah, and the intensity of a street fight, it's like just an explosion. There's no warm up, there's no getting psychologically ready for it. All of a sudden you're there, and the next thing you know, someone is trying to punch your face or trying to tackle you, or it's just immediate. So if you don't counteract that immediately, either by running full out and getting out of there, or confronting that force, with like and maybe a little bit more intensity back, man, you're going to get overwhelmed. And that's where I think a lot of people live in a fantasy world. They don't understand the intensity and the explosiveness of a real fight and the violence of it.
Yeah. So how do you get that sort of mental preparedness? How do you get ready when it's probably never going to happen for most people? How can we as instructors, our goal when we're training people in martial arts is to make sure that if they ever had to, they could. how can we make sure that we're delivering the mental toughness and the skills needed to, defend themselves?
But I think first and foremost, really kind of training somebody so that they're learning how to push their own physical and mental limits. So they have to push through these barriers of
physical training,
conditioning. Because the physical training, once you push it hard enough, is going to become mental because you have to get through this barrier and pushing through something that's absolutely uncomfortable. And then I think there's other areas that you should really focus on, and it is really know. You kind of take your own body and what you're capable of and find out what is your best punch, what is your most effective punching combination, that if you needed to do it at any time against anyone under any condition, what could you do? And that's what I look at as self-defense, is could you do under any condition against anyone at any time? Because that's what's going to happen. So if you don't know that I have a really good right hand followed by a hook, and then I can follow up with whatever I want, or I have the confidence to get inside and clinch somebody and body lock them down and get them onto the ground, you have to know what you are capable of. And then there's a little bit of role playing, just in your own mind. What if I was right here? What would I do? So that you psychologically prepare for it, you mentally prepare for it. Because if you never even think about it, not even once, and something happens, all the training you've done might just go right out the window because you're just so shocked.
And again, if you don't have that confidence in a few things, or being able to, if your attitude is if you're not confident, it's just...
Yeah, you could be training in some really whack job techniques and whack job method, and then something happens and
nothing, and you're
and,
overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
You get a brain injury, or you get your arm broke, or
and that's why
if
I
you're
think
lucky, you get a black eye, a bloody nose.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's important to just even visualize and have some imagery. When you're around your car, what if I was right here and someone attacked me? And then kind of simulate you're blocking, and you're blocking your punch and pushing the person out of the way. Using your car to create space. All of a sudden you run to the other side of your car, because what if the person has a weapon? Then you want to already have it in your mind that, man, I'm going to try to run around to the other side of my car so I have a barrier. So if you never even think about those things, you're just not all of a sudden going to automatically respond.
Yes, street fighting's not fair fighting.
No.
There's weapons.
And you can train different things. And I'll tell you this, way back in the day, Rick Fay and I would train all sorts of scenarios. Like, what if someone reached into your car? And we figured it out, and I got to use it, and and what if someone's pushes you against the wall, and we had this alley behind the old collie group that we used to do, and it was great, so we got to, it was a rocky environment, it was weird, and it was like, so we got to practice. So in your mind, we're already thinking, wow, this is kind of a strange.
I think the thing is that it's the chances of it happening are pretty rare, of you actually being attacked at random or whatever. It's fairly rare. So if that's, you don't see it happening that much, you're not going to be as worried about it.
Yeah, I always tell people this: if you're getting in street fights or fights, a lot of times, either A, it's your job, you're required, you're law enforcement, you're working some sort of security, something that's putting you in harm's way. B, you're super stupid and you keep getting in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It's intentional.
Or 3, you're going after it because you're an asshole and you want to fight. Yeah. So that's it. I mean, otherwise, your goal should be trying to avoid that. Don't go to those areas that you know are going to potentially get you in trouble. So that's a huge thing. And I remember the other thing I would say too is, ever since I've not wanted to get in a fight, I haven't been in one.
True. So do you think that for specific students, size-wise or ability-wise, are there better training methods? Should I focus more on stand-up if I weigh 100 pounds versus if I weigh 200 pounds? Or if I'm fast or slow, should I focus more on grappling and jiu-jitsu?
I mean, I think there's
Would you tell someone?
I like it initially, maybe, I really focus on 2 primary empty hand arts, Thai boxing or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is kind of the mentality. But if you got somebody who's maybe definitely a lot weaker and not able to maybe generate a ton of force, then most likely they're going to be on the ground.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. So why don't they prepare themselves to deal with that situation? That's where jiu-jitsu is probably the best art, because
Yeah.
you're dealing with someone who's bigger, stronger, and you can get in a really defensive position like the guard and control somebody, at least minimize the damage that's done to your body. And that's really what you're doing. You're trying to survive a situation that you're outweighed, and the person's stronger and they're violent, and you just got to stop yourself from getting hurt. So that's where I think jiu-jitsu is such a great art. Now, obviously, if you want to build up a different conditioning and the ability to use some strikes, then yeah, you want to have something that is simple and super effective. That's why I think like knowing how to elbow and knee, all right, and really elbow, knee, push people away, create space, and then have the ability to clinch and maybe take somebody down if needed, or clinch so that they can't punch you anymore. And that's also part of jiu-jitsu at the self-defense level. You're taught how to elbow, and you're taught how to deal with punches, and you're taught how to, what if you're tackled, how to fall correctly. So if you're not doing that part of the art, you're really missing out on, the self-defense part of it. What if, because you're not going to be able to sit there and think, I'm going to do some kind of fancy jiu-jitsu tournament move. And that's where I think, people have to address that issue of self-defense, which originally what the whole art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was developed for.
Yeah, absolutely. So, coming to the end here, do you want to talk anything about the legality of self-defense? Typically the courts require that if you're going to defend yourself, you have to be able to say that there was an immediate threat and that person could hurt you, and they actually intended to hurt you, right? Because you don't want to get in a situation where you wait. We all know that in real fights, if you wait till somebody is getting the sort of like the first punch, you're at a disadvantage. So there's some legal kind of gray area or tricky area there. You guys have any insight on that?
Well, first and foremost, I'll tell people that everyone has the right to defend themselves, right? And so, meaning if you're getting attacked, you got to defend yourself. And there's a point where if you're a smaller female, you're going to have a lot more latitude than a big, strong dude, right? They look at that and go, okay, you picked him up and you threw him on his head and you jumped on him and stomped on him a couple times, and you're 6'8" and 280 pounds.
So he used more force than
was
reasonable.
And then you got maybe a smaller woman who's being attacked, and she can scratch and bite and poke their eyes and do whatever she can to get away. And hey, you got to do what you got to do, with that case. But remember, what is the ultimate goal is safe escape, not kicking the person's ass, right?
It's not war.
It's not war, so my whole goal is to get away so I can go back to my family or go back to my house and get back to my life and be able to live normally, not to get on top of somebody and smash them. And I'm going to bring this point up because I've heard this so many times over the years. Well, I don't do that. That's why I carry a knife. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So you're going to gut somebody. You're going to be attacked, take your knife out and start stabbing somebody.
Yeah.
No way.
No way. It's not going to happen. If that's the type of thing that would happen, you've probably already done it and you're in prison. All right? It doesn't happen. Plus, the fact is, if you got a knife in your pocket, someone jumps you and starts punching your face,
or they have a gun,
or whatever,
or they're going to hit you from behind.
And what are you doing? You're going to be defending yourself, and you're not even going to think about getting your knife, because the number one thing is you never practice fighting and getting it and pulling it out
and actually stabbing
somebody. And then the fact that you open it up in this super intense fight, you're just as likely to get cut by your own knife than the other guy. And
do you feel the same way about guns?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have, gone through all the right to carry and that, but I don't feel the need to carry a gun around. I mean, I just don't, because I get in my car and I drive to the gym and I drive around and I go to nice areas. I'm not in threatening positions. All right.
And if you were, could you get it out and shoot somebody
Yeah.
fast enough? If you
Right. I
How
mean,
do you
how
train?
quickly
I mean, that's the thing.
they can
you
get
don't
to
train
you.
for
Yeah,
it.
it's your training. If you're just sitting in front of targets and shooting, your gun's already out, and you don't practice drawing it under stress and creating distance and doing all this other stuff. And then always remember, you better be willing to shoot somebody point blank if you pull it out. That's the thing. If you pull a gun out and you're not willing to shoot, well, then the person's just going to take it away from you. And
Knife too.
yeah, same thing. If you're not willing to literally stab somebody or
Yeah.
slash somebody with your knife, that's why I do a lot of stuff with the knives where you just take them out, you don't even open them, but you use them closed in your hand. Because once you open it up, you now are an entirely, because what are they going to say? Could you have gotten away before you stabbed this guy
Yeah.
who actually bled to death?
That sounds like a legal
Yeah.
can of worms
I mean,
right there.
You better be like someone home invasion where you have no way to get out and you're getting beat down and you reach over and there's a knife and you stab the person. Other than that, man, I don't really see, if someone pulls a knife on me, I'm going to freaking run
If you can.
if I can.
Yeah.
And if I can't, then I got to defend the knife because as soon as I go to reach for my knife, if the guy really has intent to stab you, and that's again intent,
Milliseconds.
it's milliseconds. If someone really wants to stab you, they're going to stab you.
Yeah.
But if they don't, it's a threat. A lot of people use the knives just to threaten you. That's a different thing. But if someone wants to stab you, man, that's like a sniper. If they want to shoot somebody, they're going to kill them. They're going to shoot them. You can't stop it.
Right.
So, man, don't be thinking that you're carrying a knife and that's somehow going to magically defend you. That's another fallacy, I think.
I think about the mental training that it's going to take to
Yeah.
be able to stick that knife in somebody's belly like that.
Yeah, it's a different.
It's definitely more intimate
guess,
than
yeah.
shooting someone with a gun.
Yeah.
But I think on all sides there's a lot of fantasy people out there who think that they would actually do it or have the time to do it, and they wouldn't.
No.
I read a thing
I
like
mean, you got to train for those milliseconds all the time.
I think it was I don't know what war they were talking about, but trained soldiers were so disgusted at sticking their bayonet into somebody, they would turn the gun around and use it as a club.
Yeah,
It was so repugnant.
if you read like On Killing or On Combat,
Yeah,
he talks
I think that's
about
where
a
I
lot
read
of
that.
a lot of things like that. So
And then you're going to carry your knife and
yeah, and then you're
stab
gonna gut
people
somebody. No, you're not. I guarantee you're not because it's not your nature. You're not a psycho.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to add to that, I think people that do train in hand-to-hand combat and then also train with weapons and handguns are more tuned in
For sure.
to they're more likely to be able to judge
To do
those
it.
milliseconds
Yeah.
and take advantage of using a weapon if they had to.
Yeah.
Right.
If I was going to carry a gun or a knife, I would want to be so well trained.
Yeah. I mean, I carry a knife around, but you know what I use it for? Opening boxes and mail and stuff like that. It makes things really convenient.
Well, I think you could stab somebody. To
Well,
be honest
I
with
mean,
you,
if
'cause you're
needed,
kind of a psycho.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You got to know when and where, right? But honestly, that's why I do a lot of stuff, even in my weapons class, where we just have the closed knife in our hand
Yeah.
and how to use that. Because man, that is already a very, dangerous weapon. Especially if it has one of those window breakers on it. Man, that alone can.
Oh yeah.
So you don't even have to open it up because the fact that you're going to cut yourself is pretty high. I've done it. Or just training, I've stabbed myself. Kind of silly, but that's the reality of it, and that's just me alone, not the fact that someone's jumping me and trying to, take me out, and how fast things collapse. And next thing you know, your knife is hitting you. It's crazy. So I think you got to be smart. But the more you train, the more aware you get. The more you're going to avoid these situations. So that's where I think all the martial arts training comes in, is the fact that you just become a smarter, more aware human being.
Yeah. Well, that's we're coming to the end of our time here, so good talk on self-defense, guys. Good talk.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Open it up. Got to open some ears and some ideas, hopefully, that we threw out there. So again, coming to the end here, self-defense. You got to think, train, and most of the time you just train to have fun, right? I remember Paul Vunak used to break up training as self-preservation and self-perfection. Self-preservation, which is this truly self-defense part of things, is a small, limited number of things, the things that you'd really use in a fight. Self-perfection, though, is kind of a limitless ability to train all the training methods, all the different, thoughts and techniques, and just having fun with it. Because if you don't have fun and you're not training consistently, it's not going to matter anyways. So you might as well have fun with it, but just know what's real and what you would rely on under that anytime, under any condition, against any one scenario. Then that's fine. And every once in a while you role play and you get it back into your head what you do to defend, and then you go back to just having fun and train. Right? Have some fun. That's the biggest thing. But in the end here, you want to make sure that you share this on all your social media. You rate us. You give us a review on iTunes, right? And if you want to get more into us, you go to our email, info@academymin.com, on Facebook, Minnesota Martial Arts Academy, or our Twitter account, which is MMAA Combat Zone, right? So give us a look-see. And next time, we're going to be talking about coaching the high-level athlete for the combat sports.